everybody. Welcome to the Infinite Lorcana Podcast, the show where we set our sights on the new Disney card game. I'm Jeremy Bertarioni.
And I'm Syed.
All right, dude, let's get started. We got a special discussion because in about another year, they're going to come out with competitive tournament Lorcana. And so a lot of people are asking me, I bet a lot of people are asking you, what cards do you think will stick? So I think right here and now, we're going to name our Power 9 for Lorcana. These are the cards that we think are going to make it all the way to the competitive scene, the organized play for Lorcana, as it was.
Yeah, not only organized play, they're going to be a great investment because, I mean, the Power 9 in Magic is worth a pretty penny.
So these are the cards that I guess, I didn't want to go into or just doing financial advice, but these are the cards that I would hold on to from the first set.
Yeah. I would definitely hold. Yeah, I mean, I currently am actually collecting 4 of every card. I'm probably like 10 cards off of having 4 of every card in this first set.
So the first of our Power 9, I think we can both agree this one's like pretty obvious just because it directly correlates to a Magic the Gathering card, and then also is a song. So, it's not free per se, but there's an element of you could avoid paying the ink for this. Our number one is probably going to just be A Whole New World, right?
Yeah, I think Whole New World is absolutely bonkers. I mean, there's a Magic card that's the equivalent, and that is?
There's actually a lot. Wheel of Fortune, Time Twister.
Yep.
In the case of having to tap a creature to pay for it, Time Spiral,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of cards that ended up being insane in Magic are A Whole New World. I mean, it's just a representative of that. Since a creature that costs 5 a character that costs 5 or greater can tap to play it, it's honestly just a lot better.
Right. Yeah. Like you're sort of getting more into Time Spiral territory where, if there's any sort of dedicated combo deck that is in the steel colors, that arises here in the next few months, then I think A Whole New World is going to be a snap off because it helps you find your pieces. It helps you sort of refill. It also beats it, especially right now. It's beating these card advantage engines, right? You have cards like Magic Mirror, Maleficent, Friends on the Other Side, where you're just trying so hard to get more cards in your hand, and A Whole New World just kind of like slam dunks, alley oops all over that plan. So
yeah, the biggest thing about Whole New World, it is probably the highest ceiling for how to play it correctly, because there are a lot of spots, if your opponent knows that you're playing it, that they can make it a bad card for you to play. But that also means that they're probably inking cards that they shouldn't, to try and empty their hand. And so there's like a balance of like trying to figure out when you're supposed to play it. And that's why I kind of like it with Fishbone Wand, because you can just tuck it away. You can just put it in your inkwell and like not have to go down that path if your opponent has made it awkward for you.
Draw 7s and being able to ink multiple cards or play multiple lands from like other card games, they just go together. Like even if we were designing a good vintage cube deck, a recipe for success is a bunch of draw 7s and like exploration or fast bond. If Lorcana's similar at all to that, then that's just gonna get better and better as time goes on, right? Like
yeah. I mean, like the shift mechanic itself makes it so that you can play this card on turn 3. Like for example, if you play Captain Hook,
mm-hmm.
and then you play the 5-mana Captain Hook,
yep.
For shift 3, then you can just play. You can end up playing A Whole New World on turn 3. So if you went 1-drop, 2-drop, Captain Hook on 3, and then play Whole New World, that means you inked 3 cards.
Yep.
And played 3 cards.
Yep.
And then played the Whole New World, which is your 7th card. That means you use 7 cards. Your opponent, if they ended up just going card and inkwell, they just end up discarding like
They discard all their cards, and then you guys are on even foot. If you just play 2 1-drops on turn 2, then you did it all. You did your whole shebang.
Exactly, and even if they drew 7 cards, they may not be able to deal with the board that you've created.
Right. Okay, so number 1, A Whole New World. And so I brought in number 1. Talk to me about number 2.
Number 2, Ariel, Spectacular Singer. I mean, this card kind of just speaks for itself. It's a 2/3. You can play it for 3, and you can play it in your inkwell as well. So the main thing about this card is that it has an ETB, which means when it enters the battlefield, you can look at the top 4 and get a song and put it into your hand.
So this is a card that scales forward well with time, right? A lot of the times in card games, like you don't want to invest in things like at rate creatures, right? Like we're a little hesitant to put Maui on this because like eventually resist might get so good or whatever that Maui just can't kill anything. So Maui, we don't know if it's going to be seeing tournament play. But a card like this with the Singer 5 ability, it lets you cheat on the amount of ink that you have to pay for things. And that never gets old, right? Cause I've played every card game, and I can tell you that those abilities never get outclassed when you can cheat on the resource system. So this basically, gets you ahead and replaces itself. The combination of those two things means that as long as there is... The only requirement for playing this in a tournament is that there is a good song.
Yeah.
So that seems pretty likely because our number 1 was already a good song.
Exactly. And so like there are already good songs that exist right now. So the biggest downside in this card right this second is if you play it, you may not hit a song, or you may have to play bad songs in order to be able to hit the right amount of songs.
We see that a little bit because Amber Steele is playing the Be Our Guest card.
Yeah, or Be Our Guest is not the worst. Akuna Matata.
Akuna Matata is really bad. Be Our Guest is still like not as good as like a good creature in that spot, especially if you're talking about threat density. I really think that it is a cost.
I agree. I still think it is a cost. I mean, what would be nice is if there were more removal spells in those colors.
So a card like Ariel, I don't think ever gets old, right? Lets you cheat on the mana system, brings the songs in. You said it speaks for itself. If we were doing jokes on this podcast, we would probably say that it sings for itself. It's a good thing that we don't do jokes on this podcast.
Yeah, Ariel has been characterized in 2 different ways: an item collector, a hoarder.
Yeah,
right. That's one section, and then the other is the singing.
That card almost made this list, by the way, just because moving forward, it has such a high combo potential.
Yeah,
there's already people trying to do the 1-turn kill thing, where you use the thing that makes it quest for more, and then you use like 2 of those, and then you just play like 5 items, and she can quest for like 15 in 1 turn.
Well, the main thing about that card, it should be that until they print like some type of item that can give a creature ward, and if you can't provide protection to that Ariel, like before you play the Ariel, like let's say you play it on turn 4, and let's say there was like an Aurora type of effect that you play on turn 3, which technically you could go like 2 mana Aurora, 5 mana Aurora shifted on.
You're designing the deck right now. You already got it figured out.
Yeah, but you already just did like a sequence of so many things that you can't produce. What do you call it? You can't produce it like perfectly. Like you can't. It's hard to make every game to do that every single game. To do that sequence of cards every single game. But yeah, I think that card has potential, but at this time, it being a 3/3, it literally dies to smash.
It's a little uncertain right now, but I'm just saying the players yearn to combo, Zan. I mean, and that card threatens to kill somebody in 1 turn from 0 to 20. Let's go.
I'm not a believer.
Okay, so number 3 on our list, Elsa, Spirit of Winter. This is one it's tough to put on the list because it's a hard sell for me that it's going to go the distance, right? In 3 years, we might have so many good options for uninkables, cards that you can't play as an ink, that this card is sort of like forgotten, right? It costs 8. It's a 4/6 only. So what like brings this over the edge?
I mean, so Time Walk is an ability that that's been great in pretty much any game that it's been in. And Time Walk is a card that you play and it gives you an additional turn. And so I like to think of Elsa as a time walk.
Okay.
Right? You play it. You tap down 2 of their creatures. You can create opportunities to take out creatures that you weren't going to be able to take out. And there's kind of like this point in the game at which maybe your opponent needs a little bit of a little bit more lore to finish the game, and you kind of just stop them. You say, "Hey, I'm stopping you. I'm also giving my characters the ability to potentially kill yours or move forward in this race." Right? You tap 2 things down. That means you put 3 lore on the board. It's a 4/6 itself.
Sure.
And so you get ahead on the race. But now let's say you do it a second time. That time walk ends up becoming more and more like relevant.
I will say that this Elsa is probably the card on the list that I'm like the least sure about that we're going to be playing in a year's time. But the next card that we're going to talk about, I'm like 100% sure we're going to be playing in a year's time.
Well, one last thing about Elsa. Shift 6. That is
true.
That is the most underrated part about this card.
Because right now people are not shifting Elsas; they're just playing Elsas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if people could like when people get enough reps, they'll start to see the lines of like, oh, in this spot I'm supposed to just shift the Elsa and not get the full value from it,
right?
And do XYZ things more, like maybe play a Rafiki with it or something of the sort. And that's when you really start to see the snowball of a time walk.
So number 4 is going to be, it's another song. I'm guaranteeing you that we're going to be playing this in a year's time. Friends on the Other Side.
Yeah, this is honestly arguably the number 1 card.
Sure. Just get you, card advantage is king in these card games. You know, the game is made up of cards. So if you have more cards, you're playing more game, you win more often, right? So Friends on the Other Side, I mean, you know, we don't even have to talk about it that much. You can tap a creature or you can pay 3. 3's like cheap enough that like you might be fine just doing it if there's no pressure on the other side of the battlefield. The only downside is we can't tell you to invest on it because it's a common or it's an uncommon. So you already just have 8 or 12 or if you have 20 of these, then that's great too. If they never reprint this set after the next year's January scheduled reprinting,
I can see this card easily being $1.
It's already $1.
It's already $1?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, we don't have to talk too much
it's
about
in a starter deck. That's the problem.
What if Lorcana takes off? It's still a card game in 20 years, and they never reprint Friends on the Other Side.
Honestly, the way I'm thinking about this as an investment is, I'm saying 2 years for 2 years is the limit I'm giving it. Like, I know that it's a good investment for the next 2 years, and then I'll reevaluate in 2 years' time.
Okay, a little too early to tell.
Yeah, I can't be like thinking about 20 years on this.
Number 5, we have another song, and this sort of is going to speak a lot to how powerful the type song is for actions.
Yes.
The ability to cheat on ink, especially with this next effect, because this next effect, if you cheat on the ink cost, then you usually have like a whole turn to deploy threats. So number 5 is going to be Prepared. This is the Wrath effect, quote unquote, right? This is the effect. This is just banish all creatures on the field. So your creatures, sort of every new player's first question, right? They're like, even mine? Oh yeah, dude, even yours.
Yeah, and when we say creatures, we're saying characters. We're just so used to saying creatures.
Banish all the characters in play. This includes, and so the reason we have this on here is because it's such a big tempo swing. You can take the initiative back a little bit, right? If they're playing creatures and you're answering them every time, eventually you're going to run out of answers and they never have to, because if you play your characters into their characters, then they can just like get ahead on lore or whatever. But a Be Prepared has the option to swing all that back into your favor.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this card is like super warping. It's completely warps the way the game is played. The moment you're playing against Ruby, you have to respect this card. Even if they're playing an aggressive deck, you're like, I need to respect this card. I shouldn't play XYZ cards, and that could have been X amount of lore, right?
Yep. We're going to talk a little bit about top 8 deck lists from this past weekend. One of them on there it's an aggressive Ruby Emerald deck that plays a couple of copies of Be Prepared.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, you just have to, in the colors. You just have to respect this card. That's ridiculous.
Number 6, it's time. And this one goes hand in hand with the other one.
Grab your sword, and that is 5 mana. Is it mana? No,
Ink.
5 ink, and deal 2 damage to all opposing characters. And so this is This can be a one-sided wrath, and or it can enable your smaller creatures to take out some of their bigger creatures. And it's a song. The card is just ridiculous.
This is going to look pretty shady when we're on like the Pro Tour Disney cruise. We're like on a big Disney cruise playing with a bunch of other card players, and we're still like, creature mana, and they're like we're paying you a lot of money, like you have to use our names for things. And we're like, okay. Number 7, this is a card that I want to introduce. It's Rapunzel. It's gifted with healing. I'm not gonna bury the lead on this one. I think as you get more synergies with things like resist, this card gets better and better, right? Like if you give a creature resist and it builds up damage over the course of a bunch of turns, and then you heal your resist creature for 3 and draw 3 cards, oh my goodness. So I think that this card has a lot of upside too, because right now you don't have so many creatures that are going to get 3 damage safely, if that makes sense, right? Like I see people draw 1 or 2 with this a lot. I think as the game progresses, those situations where you're going to draw 3 cards off of your 4 mana person that also healed your guy, and it's 2 beneficial effects. It's not like you have to do damage to your guy to draw cards, which is what you might like expect almost. I could see that from like an Amethyst card or a Ruby card, where it's like it's something that comes in, it can damage your own creatures, and then you draw cards.
Yeah.
But we're healing. I mean, we're getting it's 2 positive effects at once. So this card just seems completely pushed really hard.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's a 1/5, has a great body, so it can work with itself. So if you have 2 Rapunzels, it can easily attack a creature and then heal it with the other Rapunzel that you play from your hand. But the other thing about it is it does 2 lore.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is just like it's also just aggravating to kill. Like 5 toughness, you can get an easily 4 lore with that by the time it dies. And sometimes you're like, oh, let me just attack that thing, I'll try to kill it next turn, and then bam, they have another Rapunzel, and it just ends up costing you everything in the world. So the thing is, drawing cards doesn't discriminate. As power creep sets in, which is when more cards are printed, there's going to be certain cards that are going to be generally more powerful than other cards. A card that draws more cards allows you to see those more powerful cards as well. So as some of these cards leave the power 9, the cards that draw cards are likely to never be able to be replaced unless they're replaced by better draw effects.
Speaking of better draw effects and making things leave the power 9, I believe that this next card is like not long for the power 9. I think eventually it's going to be outclassed. The same way that it gets outclassed in kind of every card game. It's sort of hilarious. Like this card always exists, and it always is good for the first set, maybe the first few sets. And then, they print some kind of big dragon that comes in and it draws cards better or whatever that you're always going to play. So I'm talking about, of course, Magic Mirror. The item, I think it's 2 ink to play, and then you can pay 4 and tap it to draw a card.
Yeah, Magic Mirror, absolutely wonderful card. Great right now, but we kind of don't know where it's going to be in the future. I think the rate is... I don't think that... Let's say we think about what's going to come out in the next 3 sets, which I'm thinking that's what's going to be out for the...
I think it's going to be good for 3 more sets.
Yeah, but I would say maybe at the end of 2 years or at the end of 10 sets, it may fall off. But I think that Magic Mirror is going to at least be there in 1 copy.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that they really need to print is more colors should be able to interact with items.
With items, yeah. Because right now it's only steel. It's literally just in steel's color palette. You have Break and you have Beast, the hard-headed Beast.
Yeah.
Both of them are great tech cards, but if those are the only cards in the whole game that ever interact with items, we're in like a really big amount of trouble because it basically means they can never print more items that are just really good. And we already know that's not happening with some of the spoilers that we're going to talk about. But let's finish up this list so we can talk about deck lists from the upcoming tournament.
Yeah, I did want to say, I do think that at least 3 colors should be able to break items. So there's just more combinations that can break items.
Wow, what 3 colors do you think?
It would need to be colors that do not have good removal.
Okay, so what about
Purple?
Yeah, purple, and then probably so amethyst, and what about sapphire? Blue or emerald?
It should go in sapphire probably.
I like it in sapphire because they interact with items so much, and they have so many things that incentivize.
Yeah.
I
think that emerald could do it in a cool way, which is like bounce all items back into your hand.
Sure. Yeah, something like that.
Because they don't play items, but it could.
What about like banish all items? Could be something from blue.
Well, for blue, put all your items in your inkwell.
Oh yeah, put all the items in everybody's inkwell. It does yours and theirs.
Oh, that would be sick.
I think that's a good card.
Yeah, because you kind of want to like take your fishbone wands.
Yep.
Which I think honorary is probably number 10.
Sure.
It's probably going to be the most improved with every set, just because ramping yourself a lot isn't a thing that can be discriminated.
Yeah, Elsa and Magic Mirror I think are going to age out, and I think Fishbone Wand is going to age in.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be too speculative with this list. You know what I mean? I just feel like these are going to be the cards that you're playing in the first Lorcana tournament. I think maybe in the 10th is where you have the Fishbone Wands. Anyway, number 9. This card is single-handedly propping up an entire color. Cusco, the Temperamental Emperor. Zan, take it away.
I love Cusco. I love and hate Cusco. I think Ward is a bad ability for the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the more Ward cards they print, the less the cards that they gave us interact with it. And the only way that you can really truly interact with it in a positive way, it's not even positive, in like a decent way, is Wrath.
Sure.
Be prepared. So what I think is going to happen is, I think that a way that they could easily fix this, it's going to be like when Magic printed Regenerate, and they start having cards that can ignore that effect.
Right. Yeah. Things that can ignore that effect. They also just incentivize you to get in there with the characters, right? Like Cusco's probably worst enemy is Maui.
Mm-hmm.
So that's.
But if that's his worst enemy, I mean,
you come out ahead three lore. Yeah.
Yeah. Cusco seems like he always wins that battle against Maui.
So this past weekend there were 2 2Ks. There was one in Ohio, sponsored by TCG Player, that feeds into the Invitational that's going on later this month. But I think you elected to go drive down to
Cedar Bluff.
Cedar Bluff, and that's in Tennessee, right?
Yep. It was at CM Games, who has, I think, partnered with Monster Cards.
Monster Energy Drinks?
No.
Card Monster?
Card Monster, yes. Thanks. Who's a great store that we've been working with since freaking forever. I mean, we've been buying cards from them since Magic tournaments.
Man, these places don't get sponsorships. We used to be sponsored by a boba tea place. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a top 8 breakdown. We had 2 Emerald Amethyst decks, sort of the new aggro deck du jour. I think we're going to talk about that. We had 4 different copies of the Ruby Amethyst deck. This is sort of the control deck. People have compared it to Red Black in Magic the Gathering. Jund. You could do that if you want. And then we have, so that's 6. And then we have 2 outliers. We have Travis Gibson's Amber Steel Bodyguards deck.
Yep.
We might consider having him on the podcast to talk a little bit about his deck.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to Travis.
It's sort of a genre that I don't really get a lot of what's going on with the deck. Obviously, you're playing a lot of high synergy cards. I would be worried about that they're maybe a little clunky, you lack card advantage, but
I played a lot of games with the deck last night. It was pretty cool.
okay. I mean, it seems like a pretty cool deck. And then the last one all by itself is going to be the Ruby Emerald Evasive deck that also top aided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that deck is sweet. I think I played the person playing it in the tournament. Maybe I didn't. Maybe that was like one of the FNMs.
I mean, the deck is pretty sweet. It kind of has a lot of game against the other creature decks because you're playing Cusco. I think you're playing
Removal, Dragonfire.
Yeah, you're playing Dragonfire and Be Prepared.
Yep.
So having those Be Prepared in the aggressive decks is really interesting.
You also have Maui.
You're playing Maui. You're playing one of the Genie that bounces.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So it's a cool deck. I mean, it's good. It's got a place. But I think the elephant in the room, and this is really how I feel when it comes to a lot of these competitive events with just the first set. I think Ruby Amethyst is like sort of the end-all, be-all.
Yep.
I personally believe that our version of the deck, the Zan Syed version that's so popular, is the best one because it has an edge in the mirror. And I feel like you don't lose anything because of a card that I think I'm really high on. I know a lot of the Lorcana competitive voices or community, they don't like it as much. But I'm talking about Ursula's Cauldron. Zan, what's an Ursula's Cauldron do for you?
It looks at the top two cards, and you have to put one on the bottom, and then one goes on top. And so this is a card that I initially was pretty low on.
Me too.
Yeah, I literally was like, Jeremy, this card is just, you can just throw it away.
Yeah.
I was like, don't even look at that card, Jeremy. It's so bad. It doesn't even replace itself.
Zan tells me where to look.
And so what happened was we didn't have all the cards, and it was pretty impossible to get hands on cards. But the commons and uncommons for the Ruby Amethyst deck are easy to get. And one of those cards was the Cauldron, since I didn't have magic mirrors. And so I just played a bunch of Cauldrons, and I was like, this is going to be just for fun, blah, blah, blah. I come to find out every game that I had a Cauldron on 2. I could sculpt my deck to beat. I could find like basically the perfect answer every single time. It allowed me to play the game and use like my abilities, like to foresee what my opponent's going to do and deal with it, right? Like perfectly stack. It felt as though it was accomplishing two things. I knew what cards that were going to the bottom, and it was finding me exactly what I was looking for, and it fixed all the draws that purple naturally provides you.
I heard somebody say earlier that if you draw 2, it's horrible. But when I play Ruby Amethyst, I played it in a tournament this past week. I had 2 out. I felt like I was just picking what card I was going to draw out of my deck every turn. You know what I mean? I was like, I need to find a Wrath. Well, when you combine 2 Cauldrons with a mirror, let me just look at the top 4 cards of my deck right now. Do it 2 turns in a row. You'll find your Wrath. You know what I mean? That's if you're not drawing any additional cards, which is like unlikely. So I'm really high on the Cauldron right now, but I think truly, if you're looking to play Lorcana competitively and seriously, I would recommend taking a Ruby Amethyst deck to the top tables. I think there's 2 players that you could copy their list. You could copy your list, Zan Syed's. I think that's probably your best bet. And then I think the second one is you should do whatever Kendall Burnett is doing.
I think it's Bernadette.
It is Bernadette. Whatever Kendall Bernadette is doing. He also lives in Georgia. He's playing sort of 2 goofies in his list right now, and he's playing a 60-card list.
He's also playing Gaston. He's not playing any what do you call it? He's not playing any Cauldrons.
That guy loves Gaston.
And he's playing 60 cards. 60 cards.
That guy loves Gaston. He loves 60 cards. You know, it's a very he says the earth is round when he says play 60 cards in your trading card game. I like 66 because you're playing so many mirror matches, and it really gives you like a big edge in those mirror matches.
The 66 cards.
I think that what's going to be best is next week we just do a deep dive into the mirror so we can talk about how to beat the mirror how to win these Lorcana 1Ks and 2Ks that you're encountering.
I mean, honestly, that's like the mirror match is a whole. Like I could probably talk about it for. There's like a whole. It's like a whole deep dive. It's like
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? I think next week's episode is just the mirror.
Yeah. I mean,
and how to win. Because if we can tell people how to win the mirror, they can go out and they win their 2Ks, they win their 1Ks under. You top 8 every time.
Yeah, I've played we've played 2 tournaments so far.
Sure, that were
for actual money. So we played in so far we played in this 1K that was in Stone Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It was at Charlie Collectible Games, and that tournament, honestly, Jeremy and I showed up just to play for fun. Like I didn't really have any expectation to do well in the tournament. I ended up losing to Kendall. Kendall was my only loss, and that was the mirror match, and we played 1 game. We didn't get to play games 2 and 3 because it took that long, and then I won the rest. So I think my record for that tournament was, I think it was 7 rounds. So and I drew I did not draw the last round. Maybe it was 6 rounds. I think I went 5-1, made top 8 at second place, and then we didn't split the first round, right? So 8 players left. I said no to splitting. Beat my first round opponent in 2.5 hours playing the mirror match.
Yep.
And then we split top 4. Kendall was part of that. James, owner of
Wasteland,
one of the owners, who was also playing this same deck. I don't remember the last person, but yeah. That was the first tournament. And then I kind of caught the bug, and I wanted to make sure I went last weekend, and I ended up top 8ing that. That one was 7 rounds. I never lost. I went 5-0-2, so I 5 wins and double drew into top 8. Going into the top 8, I was in first place, but the competitive rules haven't come out yet. So basically, just because you are on the play, just because you are first seed, you don't get to be on the play. So in Magic, there's a rule: if you're number 1 seed, and you have the best record, that means you're going to get to be on the play against the first person that you play. In Lorcana and pretty much every card game, that's a major advantage. And so I decided to take what do you call it? I decided to offer the split. So like basically everybody agreed to split, and then we went on our merry way.
All right, so that's the competitive aspect. I think that's a good time to call the podcast. I think next week we can talk a little bit about spoilers, and then we can also do a deep dive into how to win your local 1 and 2Ks, right? The Amethyst Ruby matchup in the mirror, and how to beat everything else.
Yeah, I kind of want more spoilers to come out before we go over them. There's really not that many, and
there's some interesting ones. There's the bell that makes you the shift bell where they have to discard their hand if they attack it. There's a couple different ways you can force people to attack it, even in this first set. So that's that might be a strategy, which is good because Emerald, in my opinion, needs a little bit of help. Even though, there was obviously 3 Emerald decks in the top 8 that we talked about, and there's 0 Sapphire. So Sapphire also needs a lot of help. I don't know if the clock card from Beauty and the Beast that we're seeing that's going to go into Sapphire is going to be what makes the big difference. I kind of think it's not. So I'm looking for Sapphire to get a big boost from the spoilers and for us to be able to talk about that or the lack of it before we talk about any spoilers.
Yeah, I will say...
Sure. I just did one of the cards I liked, so that's kind of cheating.
Yeah. You
can do a card you like.
Okay. What's the name of the purple card that deals lore for 1?
Sorcerer's Spellbook.
Yeah, Sorcerer's Spellbook is a purple card that costs 3, can't be inked, and then you can pay 1 to tap it to increase your lore by 1. And in this game, one thing I had really liked was it was hard to deal lore direct for a card. It was hard to just do lore on your own turn. But an item, you can just play it and get lore right away without any other condition.
That mostly has to do with the ruby amethyst mirrors, right? Because in most of the games of Lorcana that you play, it's really easy to like spend your cards as like lore spells, right? Like if you play a 2/2 for one that quests for one, you're like, in a lot of the times you're guaranteed to be able to lore quest with it next turn and get your one. Even if it dies on the crackback, you still got your point out of the card. So that changes when you get into the ruby amethyst mirror, where a lot of things aren't like surviving a full turn cycle.
Yeah, so basically what I think is going to end up happening is I can't, like, the base of ruby amethyst is so powerful that I cannot imagine that they print enough cards that like create equilibrium among the other colors to match it.
That makes sense.
I think it would require way too much foresight, and this is Ravensburger's first time doing a card game. I would be completely blown away. I would think that if they made a second set that completely
flipped everything,
like I would say Ravensburger is probably the best card designers ever. They like pass Magic with their second set.
Whoa! I already think they did a pretty good job. I think this game is charming. It sort of has its own nuance and texture. It's really similar to Kaijudo, but I like its life system that it got from.
Nobody knows what Kaijudo is.
So it's really similar
to this game that nobody's played.
It's like Kaijudo mixed with Digimon. It's sort of a cosmic gumbo. Floop the Pig involved.
Oh my God, Floopy.
Floop the Pig from Adventure Time. You remember?
No, all I know is the dog that died mysteriously.
Oh my God.
I
don't know if you should have said that.
Oh,
all right.
Spoilers. No. Okay. So what I want to give you some insight on the purple amethyst. Okay. What's going to happen is that this card is going to come out, and it makes it so that the two most important things are now dealing with whatever your opponent is doing, and ways to lose. Ways for your opponent to lose lore. So Aladdin's and Ursula's gain a lot of stock.
What about the 6-mana uninkable Rapunzel? That's a 5/4 that when it enters the battlefield, your opponents lose a lore.
Your opponents lose a lore. Is it inkable?
No.
I think that makes it questionable.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. It exists right now. I mean, it's a card that nobody's playing.
Yeah, it probably exists right now, and it sucks.
Okay, all right.
The biggest problem in the purple red deck, the ruby amethyst deck, is the inkables. There's like, you have too many cards that are not inkable, and so finding the balance of that is probably your toughest challenge. And it's part of the reason why I play 66 cards, because your most powerful cards are the cards that you're not able to ink, right? That is the Rafikis, that is the Mirror, that's the Ursula, that is, what do you call it? That is Ursula's Cauldron.
Right.
That's Elsa. It's so many cards that at times you're like, oh my God, how does this deck even function? And then you realize that if you play a Cauldron on turn 2, you can you can draw the perfect cards you need to get to 8 mana.
Right.
And once you get to 8 mana, then you can Elsa and Wrath the board in a certain way. What's probably going to lose stock already is probably going to be Mirror. The reason why is because every time you could have played Mirror, you would rather play Spellbook. Because the only thing that matters is having the perfect card to deal with the situation and finding mirrors as quickly as possible. Because playing a creature is going to become a liability, because you're still going to be playing Rafikis and Mauis. And so you can do that while playing the Spellbook, right? And tapping it for one. One lore. And it's impossible for another Ruby Amethyst deck to deal with that. So
I think we'll have to see sort of how
break items, break all of them.
Sure, that's why I really don't want to give that effect to Amethyst or Ruby, right? I think they can't touch items.
Well, I think that I do think that. Well, purple doesn't have very much ways to remove other people's creatures besides attacking them, right? And so
Sure, but you have Rafiki, probably the best removal spell for small creatures in the game. You also have like the card advantage engine, and you're presenting the threats with purple, right? If the sorcerer spellbook is purple,
but it makes that mirror match, and it makes pretty much the whole competitive scene just about that mirror match,
right? Which I think would not be as fun. You know, I like to see Cusco sometimes. I like the Simbas.
Yeah, I do too.
Right, there you go. So I think in the interest in competitive diversity, we're not letting those two cards mess with items.
Yeah, we should get a 4-mana Hans or something.
Yeah,
that comes in. No, who's the big guy?
Kronk?
No. I was thinking Kronk at first, but
what? Cusco's, you changed the answer when I guessed it?
Cusco's buddy. He's not really Cusco's buddy, but they're in the movie together. They're like they're not best friends.
Oh, Pacha.
Pacha should be a 4-mana card that enters the battlefield and destroys all items. Or back to nature. Just back to nature. Just give us back to nature.
I think Pacha was voiced by John Goodman.
Who was that?
He's the guy. Come on, John.
Yeah, and we'll end it on that note.
Come on.
Thanks for listening to the first
episode of the Infinite Lorcana Podcast. Join us next week. We might talk a little bit more about spoilers, but I think we're just going to tell you how to win your local 1 and 2Ks with Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah, we'll give you all the details. I've lost 0 matches with that deck.
Okay, bye.
Bye.